Why should you and your team do mindset training in the off-season? You still think there is an off-season? That's not a good start. Let's keep going. Why should you and your team do mindset training in the off-season? Well, we have to look at it like this. There's different phases of the competitive season, right? Most serious athletes, most serious teams, they're doing something all year round. And like we say always, you have to study from the very best in the world. Don't just look at what the best in your state are doing, or even the best in the country. Look at the very best in the world. What do they do? How do they train? How do they approach the sport? And there's no doubt about it, the best athletes, they practice more than anyone else. It's just that simple for everything, right? If you want to be the best violinist, you have to play the violin more than anyone else. If you want to be the best writer, you have to write more than anyone else. If you're trying to be the best athlete, you have to practice more than anyone else. If you want to be strong, you got to do strength training more than anyone else. If you want to be the most mentally tough, you have to work on your mind more than anyone else. Studying the best in the world. Let's go to one of our great books here. So the great thing about all these books, they contain a ton of information, but it doesn't do any good if we're not using them. Okay, so this is Tudor Obampa, his book on periodization training. It's a classic training book. It's excellent. Okay, so you flip through it. I want to show you something right here. Different phases of training. Okay, so there is no in-season, out-of-season, but there are different phases of your training. So if you look right here, this is an example of the training phases of an Olympic sprinter. And now what they have here is there's a preparation phase, there's a pre-competition phase, there's a competition phase, there's an unloading phase, and there's a transition phase. Again, this is a macro cycle. Look at that. So that's taking it from the month of October right through September of the following year. Okay, so from October of one year through, like we said, September of the following year. That's how detailed and specific it is. Now each macro cycle is broken down into micro cycles. All right, now let me show you something else. We worked with the Olympic teams, the women's Olympic team, U.S. Greco Olympic team, and I want to show you this. Now this is something the coaches sent me. This is what their training cycle looks like. Again, notice it's very similar to what we saw in the book. Different phases: preparation, competition, pre-competition, transition. Confidentiality, we work with them. We don't want to show the whole world what Team USA is doing to prepare for the Olympics, but it's no secret that Team USA is doing multi-phase training. They're not just doing it once, or they're not just doing training during one point in time of the year. They're doing it throughout the whole year. So this is how winning mindset is broken up. All of our mindset programs, they're broken down into two phases, okay? And I haven't seen this, by the way, from really anyone in the mindset, motivation, psychology field. It's really not done like this. It's a real shame. So we wanted to take that need and bring that right to you. Okay, so the off-season is what we call phase one. And in phase one mindset training, we're working on things like goal setting, action planning, mental toughness, motivation, basically the base of your pyramid, the base of your mindset pyramid. And we all know that mathematically speaking, a pyramid can only be as high as its base is wide. It's just simple math. Okay, so we have to build that base very strong. So in the off-season months, that's when people are more likely to be going out, partying, drinking, staying up late, doing things they shouldn't be doing. So it's very important we're laying that foundation at that time of year, with keeping the motivation high, building up that mental toughness, setting those goals. Now, once we shift into the pre-competitive phase, we call phase two, the pre-competitive and the competitive phase, that's now phase two. So now that's geared more towards lessons that they're going to need when they're in the heat of competition, being in the present moment, confidence, relaxing under pressure, aggressiveness, pulling the trigger. That would be considered more phase two. Now, of course, in our programs, there's overlap in both. So if you're doing phase one, you're getting some phase two peak performance lessons. And if you're doing phase two, you're also going to get some phase one lessons as far as building that foundation. But we really try to give the athletes exactly what they need when they need it. Again, something unfortunately I have not seen. And even when it was brought to us back in college, the University of Pennsylvania, we sports psychologists come in, great guy, did a good job, but it wasn't broken down into phases like this. So we wanted to address that need, bring that right to you. Phase one training, off season. Phase two, in season. So we have that with our programs. The full program, you're doing phase one and phase two. That's true mindset training. It's not just we're going to jump in during the season. right? Now think about how that works with lifting weights. Again, this periodization book that we were talking about here by Tudor Obampa, very big with strength, conditioning, and endurance. That's the main thing Tudor Obampa talks about. So with him, it's very serious all year round. That's just to get stronger, build endurance, get your cardio up to where it needs to be, right? This is our mindset. Why would we treat it any different? Why should it be the same thing all year round? It's got to be different things. And going through the full program with your strength training, going through the full program with your technique, and going through the full program with your mindset. Again, even if you look at technique, one final example I could give you before we close this out is that with our technique, we are not usually drilling the same way in the summer as we are in season, as we are right before championship season. We're practicing our technique differently. There's definitely more of an emphasis on learning in the off season, what we'd call phase 1. And then in phase 2, now we're talking about technical training, there might be more emphasis on getting a lot of repetitions. And right before championship season, that's when we're focusing in on really cleaning up our best techniques, doing what we do really well, many repetitions, cleaning it up. So if it's that way with strength training, if it's that way with technique, why would we address mindset any different? So we want to be focusing on both phase 1 and phase 2 for the full program of winning mindset.